Welcome everyone to our webinar today. We're excited to be sharing with you learning from a piece of research that we've done together, three organizations, the Mercy Corps AgriFin project, the FCDO supported SPARC research program, and Dalberg research. And so we'll be digging in today to how to drive innovation in digital agriculture, looking at farming, pastoralist, and agropastoralist areas of Ethiopia. So we'll kick off with a presentation about the research from Alpha at Dalberg Research. And then we have a lineup of really impressive people who will share feedback on the findings and give us more context about how they can be put into practice from the three different programs. So thank you again for joining us. I see we have people from all over Ethiopia, Tanzania, Somalia, Kenya. Thank you all for logging in. And we're looking forward to this presentation and discussion. As the presentation goes on, and as you hear the comments and feedback from the panelists, feel free to join the conversation through adding any questions, comments, or reflections you have into the chat. And at the end of the session today, we'll pull out some of those questions and deepen our dialogue around the topic. So thanks again for joining. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Alpha from Dalberg Research to kick us off with the presentation.
Thank you, Chloe. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Nairobi. I'm Alpha, and welcome aboard as we share knowledge on driving innovation in digital agriculture in Ethiopia. I'm glad to be your presenter, and thank you for joining us. Let's dive into the background and objectives of the study. The study primarily utilized secondary methodology, relying on examination of sources such as journals, publications, repeatable white papers, as well as data obtained from primary and public repositories. These sources were employed to corroborate and reinforce the study's finding. It is important to note that the literature considered to generate the insights in this study was 7 years old, as opposed to the 5 years old required due to the effect of COVID-19, which hampered data collection efforts. And therefore, the objectives of the research was to conduct in-depth profiling of the producers, that is the smallholder farmers, pastoralists and agropastoralists, through studying the value chains they engage in and how they access and use digital financial services and digital information services. Furthermore, we interrogated existing information on access and utilization of DFS and DIS. Before we proceed, let's define some terms here. So through today's presentation, we will refer to these two terms, DFS, that is Digital Financial Services, and Digital Information Services as DIS. So DFS is the use of digital systems, services, and channels for the purposes of accessing finance. DIS, on the other hand, involves the delivery of information using digital channels or devices, in this context, agricultural information. So in both cases, it can be through internet, IVRs, that is the interactive voice responses or records, short messaging, mainstream media, with the aim of sharing information at the convenience of the user without physically having to visit the organization offering the service. So some of the information shared can be on markets, advice on finance or agriculture, information on intervention, among others. So looking at producer profiles, I will take you through their profiles, where they are located, dive into their demographics, and finally give you a brief into the value chains that they're involved in. In Ethiopia, the western and central regions are characterized by larger proportion of households possessing arable land, and primarily concentrated in the rural areas. Majority of the smallholder farmers in Ethiopia are situated within the agroclimatic zones that are deemed suitable for agriculture. In contrast, pastoral communities are predominantly found in the eastern and southeastern regions of the country. These regions are characteristically unfavorable to farming. These smallholders also operate in regions that have better market accessibility in comparison to the pastoral communities, and that enables them to have relatively easier access to financial services and information systems. On demographics, there is an equal distribution or a near equal distribution of education among the smallholder farmers, with half having some level of education and the other half lacking formal education. In pastoral areas, however, education levels are wanting among the household members, especially the female-headed households. Now, on value chains, the smallholder farmers engage in both subsistence and commercial crops, with maize being the most favored crop, which is cultivated by almost half of the farmers, as it is used for both home consumption and commercial purposes. Coffee is a major cash crop grown by the smallholder farmers, with less than 20% of them being involved in its cultivation. The other side, the pastoralists involved in keeping livestock, majorly for livelihood. And specifically, the livestock are sold as live animals, carcasses, or animal products such as milk and hides and skin, among others. Livestock also serves as a form of savings and insurance against economic and environmental shocks, such as droughts or crop failures. It is important to note that the value attached to livestock as social status is slowly diminishing. In the next section, I will take you through how the producers access and utilize financial services. Specifically, I will highlight some of the channels they employ to access finance-related information and shed light on their saving and borrowing behaviors. I will also shed some light on the insurance uptake as a form of de-risking. So first forward, poor infrastructure across the South, that's the arid and semi-arid regions, leads to longer travel time to financial institutions, hindering pastoralists from enjoying financial benefits. And now, looking at the uptake of the formal financing, we see we still observe low rates among producers. The non-ASAL regions having relatively high account ownership rates than the ASAL regions, with the public and ATM banking being most preferred. We will see the reason for this in the next slide. The pastoral households are still underserved, but we see that female-led households tend to own a bank account more than their male counterparts. This is common in areas where the DRIVE project is run, that is the de-risking, inclusion, and value enhancement. This is a project funded by World Bank and partners and was established to enhance pastoralists' access to financial services for drought mitigation, include them in various value chains, and facilitate livestock trade in the Horn of Africa. So the ability to have a formal account and save is affected by the holder's preference. Most regions prefer informal saving, especially the pastoral areas. The smallholder farmers in Ethiopia who have accounts prefer public financial institutions for several reasons. Well, it could also be said that their preference is affected by the dominance of the market by the public financial institutions. But some of the reasons for their preference includes their perspective that public banks are more trustworthy and stable compared to the private banks. Secondly, they consider public banks to have more lenient loan requirements. And finally, they consider public banks to offer more favorable rates of interest and longer tenure. So although banks, circles, and microfinance institutions have the potential to provide digital solutions among the producers, there is still limited usage according to the Ethiopia Socioeconomic Report in 2020. It is important to note that there are upcoming platforms like Ekub that seem to provide savings and borrowing services using mobile app. So either way, there is still a large proportion of smallholder farmers who still hold cash at home or among relatives. Among the pastoral communities, informal channels, which rarely provide digital financing, have greater traction, especially among the female-headed household. So looking at the borrowing behaviors, we see that ideally the smallholder farmers prefer credit compounded with inputs, which is mostly provided by the microfinance institutions at favorable rates of interest. In cases where the smallholder farmers don't have access to collateral, they don't have a collateral, they opt for informal sources, such as borrowing from traders who are generally exploitative. In some instances, the smallholder farmers may be unable to access credit, even with collateral, due to a range of factors such as stringent loan requirements, limited access to financial institutions, inadequate financial literacy, lack of trust in the financial institutions, and perceived high risk of lending to the small-scale farmers. So in an effort to increase access to financial services in pastoral areas of Ethiopia, the PRIME, that is pastoralist areas, resilience improvement, and market expansion. Currently, the PRIME is run by, is overtaken by another project called RIPA, that is Resilience in Pastoral Areas. The two are run by Masico, and they have successfully initiated products such as Islamic finance products, IBLI, that is the index-based livestock insurance, and mobile banking. And through these initiatives, PRIME has successfully increased financial inclusion, provided safety net for vulnerable populations. So looking at insurance, we see that the uptake is still low, which is attributable to awareness levels. Specifically in rural areas, households are mainly familiar with government, health insurance, and funeral insurance. On the other hand, the uptake of livestock insurance is slowly improving. This is courtesy of services such as IBLI, that is the index-based livestock insurance, and presence of NGO staff in the ASAL areas taking up initiatives to de-risk against the vagaries of climate. Looking at access and utilization of digital information services, education and knowledge are vital in agriculture, since they enable producers to acquire and use information effectively, leading to the adoption of technology and modern inputs. This knowledge can be shared with rural farmers through different channels, including traditional and modern forms of ICT, facilitating knowledge transfer and decision making. Looking at the phone ownership, there is relatively low cell phone ownership in Ethiopia when compared to other emerging markets. This is according to GSMA report 2020. This dominant is in rural areas and can be attributed to infrastructural limitations, affordability challenges, limited awareness, geographical barriers, digital illiteracy, and cultural factors, especially for those who prefer traditional communication methods. So these factors contribute to low adoption rates. However, efforts are underway to address these challenges and improve mobile phone accessibility and affordability in Ethiopia. Just to mention, case in point, Digital Strategy 2025. So access to and use of information is a critical factor in promoting adoption and diffusion of agricultural production technologies among the producers. Farmers require access to information on new technologies, innovations to improve productivity, increase income, and enhance their resilience to changes such as climate change. And looking at the channels, we note that the extension workers play a crucial role in the dissemination of production information, with agricultural communities serving as pivotal component of the agricultural network. Ethiopia is the largest, ideally as the largest extension system in Africa, with over 50 extension agents, approximately 3 per kebele, or 21 DAs per 10K farmers. So building on the extension officers as the primary sources of information, the information they share is delivered through trainings, farm visits, or through mass media. And here we talk about radio or TV platforms. The information delivery is limited to certain extension activities with less usage of print media. Let's jump to some of the challenges and opportunities that exist in accessing and using DFS and DIS. So producers generally face hindrances in achieving optimal productivity. Small-scale farmers, the smallholder farmers, are limited by climate change, poor infrastructure, and lack of access to credit, with limited access to markets, land degradation, and limited access to inputs. The pastoral production systems, on the other hand, are threatened by imminent droughts, shrinkage of open lands, global warming, to mention a few. The pastoralists in the ASAL regions, such as Somali and SNNP, face limitations in accessing digital information due to limited network coverage in those areas. And now looking at electricity as an enabler of digitization, many parts of Eastern Ethiopia suffer a low to lack of electricity access, with a majority of the regions falling below the national average. Ideally, this leaves the northern parts, which are inhabited by the smallholder farmers, with access to electricity. So the primary obstacle to financial inclusion revolve around perception of inadequate funds, limited proximity to financial institution, be it branches or agents, and absence of necessary documentation. So while farmers have access to inputs, information, and markets through various channels, physical barriers and personnel shortages still continue to be significant concern. Case in point, for input, if you look at input, they declared distribution networks and high tariffs on improved inputs. If you look at market access, they decry physical infrastructure and limited pricing power, especially the imbalance between the producers and the aggregators and the brokers. So is there any hope? Despite the existing challenges, Ethiopia's dynamic ecosystem presents opportunity for stakeholders to foster the growth of digital services, and therefore to improve the productivity and livelihoods of smallholder farmers in Ethiopia. It is necessary to address constraints they face in both crop and livestock sectors, and thus improving access to finance, extension services, market information can enhance the productivity of both crop and livestock. About the pastoral areas of the livestock sector, improving access to veterinary services, reliable, timely information, and feed supply can play a significant role. Moreover, if we encourage and support the participation of women and youth in both crop and livestock sectors, that can also promote growth. So what are some of the success stories, or rather milestones, that we can tell? The Digital Connection for Prosperity, an initiative funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, aims to implement the Ethiopia Digital Strategy 2025. We had mentioned this earlier. It does this by connecting innovative digital companies with government champions to benefit disadvantaged Ethiopian citizens. So the initiative facilitates collaboration between companies and officials, ensuring most impactful projects are developed to improve access to financial and public services for the Ethiopian citizens. We see some progress made as of late 2022, and it's a continuation with a few entrants like Google, Africa 118 that deals with Google digital skills training, and the same branch that deals with SIM registration. So what were some of the gaps we encountered while doing this study? So looking at the gaps in digital financial services, there's limited data or information on the financial behaviors and practices of the producers, especially after accessing finance. Quantifiable information like the amount of loans producers would be interested in, amount borrowed, incomes on sale of products, and utility of funds is also missing, making it difficult to gauge the value of investment. Furthermore, women empowerment is least studied in most studies. When we looked at the gaps in digital information, we noted that not much information was available about how producers use accessed information to solve problems. Efforts to tackle digital literacy as a barrier have not been widely researched on, and most studies that we reviewed on pastoralists adopted case study format as opposed to a representative sample or a census. Although this can be attributed to the nomadic nature of the pastoral operation, and this makes the domain expertise very important in studying pastoral behaviors. Addressing these gaps would contribute to more nuanced understanding of how digital financial access influences transaction behaviors, income dynamics, and expenditure strategies, as well as risk management amongst the producers. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Alva, for that presentation. And thank you for people who have started to ask some questions that will take us deeper in the conversation in the chat. If you have any questions for Alva, please do ping them there and we'll come back to them later in the session. For now, I would love to invite Elias to come up first as our panelist. Elias is the Global Digital Climate Smart Agriculture Director at AgriFin. And Elias, if you could kick us off by sharing more with us on what you're seeing on trends in digital information and financial services in Ethiopia now, and what opportunities are emerging.
Great. Thank you, Chloe. So to begin, if I can just add on to some of the points that Alpha has raised in terms of the previous or current situation and transition into trends, in terms of how DFS and DIS has been made more accessible. Firstly, based on some GSMA studies, network access was not evenly distributed throughout the geographies. So there were pockets of lowland areas with limited internet access, and 4G was limited to a number of cities. Limited capacity of mobile networks resulted in poor quality of services. This means that the 3G and 4G networks were ultimately overutilized by a vast majority of users, again, resulting in poor quality. As Alpha also mentioned, data and mobile services, mobile devices are significantly more expensive in Ethiopia compared to other peer countries, resulting in low usage. However, the country's been working to address a number of these challenges. So this is one One point could be the privatization of the telecom, which has introduced additional actors and made the sector a bit more competitive. This has also resulted in an expanded 3G, 4G network to accommodate more users and improve quality. The addition of the new telecom is also, or actually the introduction of mobile money has been introduced by both the telecoms, in addition to some of the financial institutions. In addition, some of the mobile network operators have begun subsidizing or distributing devices as part of government programs to ensure that users can access these devices as part of PSNP programs and the like. In addition to that, there's also been a number of government initiatives that have been implemented to address this. So Alpha mentioned the Digital Ethiopia 2025 strategy, which focuses on shifting towards e-commerce and digitizing traditionally non-digital industries. So this includes developing digital IDs, expansion of digital payments, introduction of e-governance, just to name a few. In addition to that, there was an initiative launched last year by the name of Digital Agricultural Extension Advisory Services, DIAS, the roadmap, and ultimately that supported a number of convenings and meetings, a landscape analysis, and ultimately a roadmap to implement the recommendations. The output of this piece of work also included a 30-point implementation plan that focused on solutions pipeline, a digital stack, and a set of activities to make the ecosystem more enabling. In addition to that, I'd like to highlight one of the unique initiatives that has been up and running by one of our partners, Lursha. Lursha is a hybrid digital platform that integrates multiple services to provide access to agricultural extension information, agroclimate advisories, provision to purchase and delivery of farm inputs, financial services through their partnering financial institutions, mechanization services, and recently they've begun an expansion into lowlands to support agropastoralists and pastoralists. So providing veterinary services, linkage to feed and forage suppliers, and again, expansion of their DFS services. This platform is accessible to the users if they have a capacity and understanding on how to use the platform directly through their mobile devices, or an agent model where these agents in their specific villages can facilitate these services. So not a solely digital solution, but a hybrid solution to accommodate the emergence of this digital services. In addition to that, one of the projects that I've actually been working very closely with is the Sprout platform, which is an open content platform where content providers provide high quality digital content, and our team further curates and enhances the content that can be ultimately reutilized by farmer facing organizations that can then redistribute it to their respective farmers. Based on the current trend in Ethiopia, there's been a high demand to obtain financial literacy content, digital literacy content, and we've also had a number of engagements and discussions with the mobile network operators to further capacitate some of their rural communities by leveraging this content. So the trends are definitely moving in an upward direction due to these factors, but it seems like there's a major improvement. Thanks, Chloe.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Elias, for that. To dig into some more in-depth examples of how some challenges have been overcome, I'd like to invite Tilahun Asmare, who's the Program Performance and Quality Director for Mercy Corps in Ethiopia. Alpha mentioned a few Mercy Corps digital financial service programs. Elias mentioned a few as well. And Tilhun really supports the team in learning what's working and what's not working. In the chat, there were a few questions about how can we really overcome connectivity issues, what's realistic in terms of digital services, as well as questions around literacy and how literacy can affect the access to digital services as well. So Tilhun, if you could come up next and share with us some in-depth examples from Ethiopia and how some of these challenges have been overcome and what's next up.
So, okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure just to share with our inspiring experience, especially focusing on how Mercy Corps has catalyzed inclusive financial services in Ethiopia and evolved through digital financial inclusion services through time in the country. In 2011, Mercy Corps, through the RAIN program, that my friend mentioned, supported the establishment of the Somali region first microfinance institution, and that my financial institution was it's the first interest-free microfinance in the country, with 2 branches and with full-on program. Like by late 2013, the RAIN program transitioned to prime program, and the Somali microfinance opened 40 more branches, totaling 60, and by this time, you know, the Somali microfinance had disbursed loan amount worth of 40 million ETB. 80% of the loans were given to women. In 2015, it was a remarkable journey for the Somali microfinance with the introduction of Hello Cash, which is the mobile and agent banking service that was extended banking service to harder to reach waradas with the support of Prime program, and that helped to really leverage on the technology and expand to hard reach areas where the internet connectivity was really hard. But frankly speaking, with working closely with the Somali microfinance, with the regional government and the telecommunication corporation of the country, you know, we try to widen and expand the coverage across the region. So by the end of the prime, which was in 2019, the Somali microfinance has expanded to 43 branches across Somali region, with more than 300,000 savers, and of which 38,000 of them access loan from the Somali microfinance. So Mercy Corps also supported the establishment of race microfinance in the Somali region to catalyze the competition and have better service to the community. And also learning from that experience, Mercy Corps also supported the establishment of Afar Microfinance, which was the second inclusive microfinance in the country, and also the first one in the region. Mercy Corps also partnered with the then Amhara Credit and Saving Institution, AXI now it's converted or promoted to Sadeh Bank, to have inclusive financial services in the Amhara region, like for the smallholder farmers, learning from our achievement in the lowland part of the country in terms of developing inclusive financial services to the lowland part of the Muslim community. We try to help AXI to have innovative and inclusive products for the Muslim dominated zones such as the South Wallo and Oromia, special zones of the region. You know, we are learning from the experience with our RIPA program and the state program, which is also in the Somali region. We worked with Somali microfinance institution, which achieved another milestone for promotion to Chevrolet Bank in 2011, and we helped the bank to launch its CBC and digitized its branches into 2022. Currently, you know, Mercy Corps is implementing programs that are fully focused on digital financial services in lowland parts of the country. We call it RESDFS, which stands for Resilience and Income for Smallholder holders in Ethiopia. So digital financial services. We are working in Afar, Somali, and Oromia region. It's a 3 years program, but that was launched last year. As of now, we have partnered with 4 financial institutions with that program, working with Chevrolet Bank and Race Microfinance Institution for the Somali region, Sinke Bank for the Oromia region, and also Awash Bank for the Afar region. Mercy Corp actually helped these financial institutions, one, to develop business strategy and upgrade their systems and processes for DFS, to develop actually their strategies and implementation, detailed implementation plan, and also support them to recruit, train, and onboard agents across the country, especially on our implementation area. And also, like it's not only just to work on the supply side, actually on the demand side, supporting the awareness and the literacy of the program participants is really great, very important. So, we partnered with those institutions to have a significant role in building trust with the support of Sharia compliant financial Sharia, we call it Financial Institution Sharia Advisory Board, SHFs, that play a significant role in building the trust of the community to adopt Sharia compliant financial services, and also, to support the uptake of those products by the poor households in those areas, and especially on the women-headed businesses. The program supported those financial institutions to conduct financial literacy, promotion, and marketing activities using various media channels, such as TV, radio, social media, and billboards. Yeah. Then the program also facilitates like linkage workshop with traders and also financial inclusion service providers. So I want just to boldly mention Imuraba financing that we have piloted with Race Microfinance. It was an innovative pilot that we started with a RIPA program that Imuraba financing now have reached 4,270 new businesses during the last 5 months, with a total loan of 57 million US Ethiopian birr, and with 60% of the loan clients are female, and 38 of were focusing on 38% of those clients are agricultural, invested the loan or the finance on agricultural production. So, specifically financial services or the financial institutions, 810 of them are pastoralists and agropastoralists, and also farmers. Now they receive the Murabba Agriculture Digital Loan, and then they invested to diversify, to have like an agricultural input from the traders that we have supported. So with the Hello Cash that I mentioned previously, that Hello Cash was really it's really expanded to all the regions, and now it reached 1.35 million users across the Somali region, and that has 10.7 million daily money transaction in the Somali region. So the loans are not directly only going to the pastoralists, the agropastoralists. We are also supporting the traders, focusing on large livestock buyers, private veterinary pharmacies. In one or another way, they directly help to enhance the volume of transaction across the value chain and the market system, and also increase services and goods to boost agriculture and livestock production in the Somali region, and as well as in the Afar and Oromia region. So this is some of the data and also the link that I want just to share. As you said, one of the challenges, especially during the first years of this program, was financial literacy from the customer sides, from the target program participant side. So we partnered with financial institutions to promote and provide trainings to the community using different media that I said, in the school clubs, in the mosques, working with religious leaders. So, you know, all those help to penetrate the awareness level of the community, to raise, sorry, the awareness rate of the community and users, and also ensure the benefit of women and marginalized and hard to reach community in those lowland part of the country. Over, if there's any follow-up question, I'm happy to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shahud. Those were really rich examples and ways that you really tackled overcoming some of the challenges and still being able to innovate and provide digital services in a challenging context. For our next set of comments, I'd like to invite Carmen. Carmen is the technical lead for markets and livelihoods for the SPARC program. SPARC is a program that aims to generate evidence and address knowledge gaps to build the resilience of millions of pastoralists in sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. And Carmen, while Tilahun and Elias gave some examples of how to overcome some of the existing challenges, I'm wondering if you can speak to what sort of investments can be made to support the adoption of digital solutions that would make it easier also for digital solutions to be rolled out, especially in drylands and pastoralist contexts.
Yeah, thank you so much. Especially on access to devices, mobile devices. It was one of the challenges that we have encountered maybe 7-8 years ago when we start on with Somali microfinance on the Hello Cash. So we worked with I remember the program team worked with Ethiopia Ethio Telecom to have to supply like affordable phones that, you know, the target community can buy. It was, I remember, 300 birr by then. So it was really worked well for us. The second, like when we were working with Somali microfinance, especially on the cash transfer, we cost share with the community. Like we subsidized the cost of mobile phone. You know, during that time, access was really challenging. So we cost share, and then that really, especially in the Somali region, and we saw that really brought some sort of like incentivizing the community to buy their own, like those people who were not able to get the subsidized phone. So I mentioned that one was one of the success. But now I feel when you see the data compared to what it has been 10 years ago, there is a lot of improvement. So I think we can leverage that improvement as well. And the network availability is, yes, that's a challenge in most part of the country, but you know, we can, but we need to also acknowledge the improvement by the Ethiopian telecommunication, and also the competition now the Ethio Telecom has with Safaricom. That's also an opportunity for us to pursue and also work with both operators and have that positive competition to increase that network availability. I think that's one with the number of microfinance growing. I think that's really very interesting question that I want just to reflect. With the number of microfinance growing into the banks, do the smallholder farmers continue enjoying the same level of access to finance as the MFIs? You know, I tried to have an interview with, especially with Zade Bank now. Now Zade Bank, they have also Axi. The Chevrolet Bank, the Zade Bank, you know, those, as you know, those are established to support the community. So, you know, they maintain that part of their operation, that like they give, they are operating as a bank, as well as they are also providing those loans to the targeted communities as microfinance institution. But I see the more the aspiration is to be more bank and also be more what you call it competent. So I feel that could compromise the quality and the access. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Carmen. We should all have the passion for this subject as Tilahun does. Really wonderful comments from you, Tilahun, and thank you for sharing all the experiences of, for Mercy Corps. I also wanted to thank Alpha for your presentation. The amount of data that's in there and really what you were able to pull out is excellent. And pulling back to the question of sort of that enabling environment, you know, as everyone was presenting, I was going through the chat and looking at all the good comments and the great questions. And what really strikes me is, you know, there is no one answer. We have to be layering on all of these the issues if we really want to drive adoption. We often think about digital financial services as being primarily the app or the technology itself, you know, the digital technology itself, the product. But as was mentioned by, I think, all of our speakers, the connectivity, the network itself, for people to be able to access it easily, that distance that they must go. There was an excellent comment in the chat about the cash in and cash out locations. We see this in many locations where people, even if they have the network and can connect, it doesn't mean where they're able to go and either load the digital money or to take out digital money and transfer it into cash. Those shops and kiosks or cash in, cash out locations don't always have the working capital necessary, especially when we want to get into trade and livestock trade. Where we've seen, I think what we're seeing in Ethiopia is the emergence.
We received some warnings that here in Nairobi, some pockets of our neighborhoods are going offline this afternoon. So this may be what happened to Carmen. So we'll pause her statement and hope she joins us and complete that. And in the meantime, I'd like to invite our next panelist, who is, yes, great. Thanks, Carmen. We'll move on. I'd like to invite Farhana. Farhana is a program engagement consultant with AgriFin in Ethiopia, who's very passionate about how we best take these recommendations forward, the how-to and the next steps. So Farhana, could you speak to us about some of the tools that we have in our toolbox for innovating and moving forward with digital services in farming and pastoralist contexts?
Thanks, Chloe, and hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. For your question, Chloe, I would like to answer those in two separate ways. The first one would be around how to tackle those opportunities and how to make sure that we're using those opportunities as innovation areas to work on. Looking at the outputs of the study, we were able to see that there were different challenges that the farmers as well as pastoralists face in some of the things that they implement. Elias, I think, also touched on those. The challenges include limited digital literacy, low use of financial services, limited access to credit, limited access to information, and so on and so forth. So a way to look at those one way to look at those challenges is to look at them as opportunities. I think Alpha also mentioned that as well. So I would like to really re-emphasize on that. If we look as those challenges as opportunities or support areas that we can work on to address the challenge of the smallholder farmers, I believe we can improve the lives of smallholder farmers. And create impact, because we already know that Ethiopia has a very large population of farmers and pastoralists that we can actually create impact on, right? So we can do that in a way by looking at challenges as opportunities. Another way to look at that or to address that is also taking learnings from other countries, like other countries in Africa or Asia or elsewhere, by looking at how they have overcome these challenges, if they were facing these challenges and have overcome them, right? So taking what's called the latecomer advantage, we can somehow skip the trial and error phase and implement what has been proved to be successful in other countries. We can take learnings from Kenya, for example, on their digital ways of reaching smallholder farmers in terms of digital information or extension advisory or so on and so forth. There's also one caveat that I need to make, which is when taking learnings from other countries, we also need to tailor it to the Ethiopian context and make sure that it's very beneficial to smallholder farmers and addresses the challenge that they're facing. So that's one thing when it comes to the opportunities and how to leverage those opportunities. When it comes to ways that we are working on or we have we can to increase digital innovations. One thing that we're doing through AgriFin, based on our experience through by working with different countries, different partners, including Ethiopia, is bundling, the importance of the bundling approach, where we're bringing together different players to build comprehensive services to address constraints for farmers across shared platforms. So this actually or essentially joins products or services to sell as combined or linked unit for the smallholder farmers. This approach makes the life of the smallholder farmers much easier, where we're not essentially asking them to use different platforms for the different types of services they require throughout the whole value chain. But since we're talking about farmers that are more or less digitally literate, asking them to use one platform that brings together different activities or different services throughout the value chain makes their life much easier, and also increases the use of different digital innovations is one point that I would like to mention. Another one is in terms of when designing different interventions, leveraging farmer-centric research or human-centered design approaches when working on or innovating the ideas is one thing that I'd like to emphasize. This will definitely help promote active adoption of services for the smallholder farmers. This is essentially working with farmers to build products and services that are obviously useful to them, understood by them, and actually have real benefits to their daily lives. So making sure that we employ that human-centered design when designing innovation areas is one thing as well. The last point that I would like to make, which actually complements the bundling and then human-centered design approach, is not everything can be done by one institution. Different innovations require having different partners in the ecosystem to work on different areas, be it private sector, be it government institutions, and so on and so forth. I think Ilyas has mentioned a couple of Alpha also mentioned a couple of initiatives that are being done in Ethiopia that brings together the different partners that exist. So that's one important aspect that we also need to think of. We also can do a market systems development approach where we can focus on understanding why the agricultural market system is not efficiently working for the farmers and pastoralists, then addressing the underlying systemic constraints present. And to do that, there should be understanding of who are in the market or who are the market actors, how do they relate to each other, how can they work together, and other market system development questions. Or answering these market system development questions can help in bringing together different partners to provide bundled services, as well as services that give human-centered design that are useful to smallholder farmers. I believe this is what Mercy Corps Ethiopia is working on, or one of the approaches that Mercy Corps Ethiopia has, as well as AgriFin has in terms of ways of implementing things. So I'll stop there with my inputs on opportunities and ways to increase digital innovations. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, Farhana. I think Carmen started to dig into some more of the questions in the chat, and we'd like to continue and highlight some of those now. There's been so much rich discussion. So we'll take some of those questions back to Alpha and some of the panelists to respond to. In case we don't get to every question in the next half an hour or so, We'll also be publishing a blog a few weeks after this webinar, where we'll do our best to answer the rest of the questions. So we can stay in touch that way. I'll put the link to where to find that as well into the chat near the end of this session. So turning towards the questions and building on what Farhana was saying in terms of solutions, I'd like to invite Elias back to talk about additional approaches and ways to tackle some of the challenges that have been highlighted, and especially in the face of climate change and climate adaptation. How can digital services play a role in helping communities and countries in the face of climate change?
Great. Thank you, Chloe. And please feel free to rein me in if I go off topic, if I deviate a bit. There were a number of really interesting questions out there in terms of the challenges and barriers preventing smallholder farmers, agropastoralists, and pastoralists leveraging these types of technologies and services. Based on a number of the previous works that have been ongoing in Ethiopia, and the number of studies, and I think Alpha did a fantastic job highlighting a number of these challenges. But one of the biggest challenges is access and familiarization of these services. There are a number of really unique services out there. I think one of the individuals highlighted Digital Green. The service I worked on when I was in Ethiopia was the 8028 Farmers Hotline. And we actually worked very closely with Digital Green, PAD, GIZ, USAID, a number of different organizations. So one is reducing the barriers to allow the members of the rural community to access these services. So through this engagement with all these partners, the Ministry of Ag, Ethio Telecom, what we've done is made the service toll-free, which enabled a wide range of users of the service to try it out, sample it out. We were broadcasting alerts, due to, in the time of low rainfall, pest outbreaks, and it really allowed them to familiarize themselves with these types of digital information services. So really reducing the barrier to access these informations and resources. The other area that I'm actually quite passionate about, and I've been working with a wide range of partners and plugging in on that digital ag extension advisory service roadmap, is capacity building. One of the biggest challenges is Ethiopia, compared to some of the neighboring or peer countries, has a relatively low level of both functional and digital literacy in the rural communities. So there needs to be a more concentrated effort in terms of, familiarizing these communities on the use of digital information services. This could be in the form of receiving SMSs, also showing them how to utilize the SMSs, navigating the menu structures of these tools. One of the challenges that we found when we launched this service initially was based on the unfamiliarity of using these services. Certain users would tend to type 111 just to go through the menus, but that was also resulting in providing incorrect information and also getting access to content that they may not necessarily need. So we came up with approaches to rotate the menu structure based on the planting seasons. So this also goes back to really understanding your customers and clients, or the farmers, and really coming up with a very human-centered design in developing these systems. I've been fortunate enough to have a really good support staff there, where we were constantly re-engaging, collecting feedback, and working to adapt these systems. In addition to that, one of the services that I'm really excited to roll out in Ethiopia in the coming year is as part of Sprout, we've developed a digital weather advisory service that we've plugged in Kenya with our farmer-facing organizations. They get a 7-day forecast in their specific location based on the longitude and latitude information they provided. So they'll get a 7-day forecast so that they could be more informed and make more informed decisions about their farming practices. One of the challenges that we've encountered implementing this in Ethiopia is the type of data information that's currently available is not that specific. It's more based on either the Warada or Kabbalah that they're located in. So working with the large number of stakeholders to refine and collect really useful and specific information to ensure that they're able to plug into these services and get more refined climate advisories and services. But this is just a very short taste of the different opportunities, challenges that are currently taking place in Ethiopia, and really looking forward to working with partners to assuage those challenges and ensure that the smallholder farmers and agropastoralists and pastoralists can get access to really pertinent information and resources. Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you so much. Those are really helpful. There's a few questions as well in the chat around regulation. Are there any regulatory factors that need the attention of regulators in order for digital financial and digital information services to benefit market actors? Questions about the role of government in enabling digital services and potential for public and private partnerships in this space. It would be great to hear a bit of the reflections around this. I'm wondering, Tilahun, if you would like to kick us off, and then perhaps Elias has some detail to add.
As Alpha had mentioned earlier in his presentation, and I also alluded to in my brief overview, what we've noticed is there has been a appetite for policymakers and such to really understand the opportunities and potential risks in approving and rolling out these DFS related strategies. I believe the provisional regulation with regards to mobile money was initially released in 2012, and it's taken a significant amount of time, almost 9 years until the mobile money services were initially made available to financial institutions, and then ultimately opened up to mobile network operators. And unfortunately, I think, from my understanding, the government and policymakers wanted to ensure that these types of services would ultimately, they wanted to safeguard the users of these services. In addition to that, some of the policies initially really focused on certain sectors providing set of services. So, for instance, mobile money was initially only intended to be provided by financial institutions. However, based on a number of studies that were conducted by the government and policymakers, again, experiences from other African countries, it was eventually opened up to non-financial institutions, and then eventually mobile network operators. And based on recent statistics from Ethiopia Telecom's Telebir, there's been a huge surge of uptake in those areas. In addition to that, I think Telehun also provided a background on Hello Cash's uptake in Somali region. A lot of these success stories ultimately have driven opening up the mobile money sector in Ethiopia, and allowing more players to to utilize these services. That's not to say that the entire sector is opened up for anyone to participate. There are a number of regulations and requirements that these entities need to qualify for before participating. But again, the number of mobile money operators has significantly increased from about 2 years ago. In addition to that, there also needs to be more awareness creation and comfortability in terms of these segments of the population utilizing these services. As Alpha alluded to in his earlier presentation, there's a huge segment of the population that are still using informal financial services. However, that could shift based on various strategic and targeted awareness campaigns and socialization of the benefits of these types of services. So this shift could easily take place over the next 10 years, having Ethiopia's mobile money usage look very similar to that of Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that background and also great examples, really bringing some color to the discussion. It looks like Carmen has rejoined us, so I'd love to invite Carmen to wrap up what she started discussing earlier and also speak to community preference to informal services and also informal networks, which has been brought up a couple of times in the questions in the chat.
Great, thanks, Chloe, and apologies, everyone. Network sometimes goes out. As far as I think most of the other presenters have hit a lot of the issues that I was going to raise regarding the preference for informal finance. As I started saying, we really need to be addressing multiple layers of reasons why people don't adopt these services. I think the transaction costs in mobile money in those terms can be very discouraging, especially if you are cash poor. If you are monitoring all of the money that you are transacting, paying a few additional birr, in the case of Ethiopia, that can add up and have a big impact. And then using formal finance, I don't think it was addressed necessarily in this study. We've seen it come out of other studies completed through SPARC, where even though there were great formal finance, so lending opportunities, what people were hesitant, why they were hesitant to engage in it and preferred sort of the soft loans or the informal finance is the accountability. When you're taking money from a formal financial institution, you really need to be repaying that loan and being able to service it. And so if you already have a lot of risk in your life, if you have a potential, especially for livestock traders or people who are trying to do business and are looking for working capital or to expand their business, they don't want to incur any more risk, and they see formal finances as another adding to their risk portfolio. So I think layering in financial services that help them mitigate that risk. So risk being you take out a loan, for some reason you're unable to pay it. You have some accountability there. But if you're borrowing from a friend or a family member, they will be more patient with you and allow you to repay in different terms or slowly, or be a little more understanding. Again, that didn't come out of this study. I don't think it was specifically looking at that, but this is what we've seen come out of some other SPARC studies. Chloe, that's all I have to say. I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks so much, Carmen. I'm pointing up to some additional resources. As we wrap up, you'll see a few links popping into the chat on where to access resources from this research and other research that's complementary to it, as well as how to reach out to all of the programs and organizations that have been involved in this. And as we wrap up, I'd like to invite Collins from AgriFin to share with us his reflections about this work overall, and also how we can engage more around different content. So welcome, Collins.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning from where you're joining us. I've seen I even have some participants from Seattle. Glad to have you on board. I will build from the previous webinar we did in Kenya. There was a question that was asked. We have seen this data before. What is different? So I'm going to elaborate more on that. But as I do that, and since we have been doing this event and we've done it in Kenya, and we're planning for another one in Nigeria, we'd like to elicit some feedback from you. So there is a link that I'm going to paste on the website, on the chat, so that you can be able to give us some of your feedback. We'd be really appreciative if you can be able to assist us and help us improve as we go along. But just to go back to the question that I was referring to, when you're developing a particular program or a project, you look for data and you scour the internet to try and find out what is the current situation of the target group that you're looking at. So for us, together with SPARC, we are looking at agro producers, and we want to see, or when you're developing projects and proposals and trying to develop some insights, we had to scour the internet and try to find out what's the plight of smallholder farmers, what's the plight of agropastoralists and pastoralists. We felt that this is a challenge for all of us in the industry, and we partnered up together to provide a resource where you can easily use to gather this information at one particular point in time. So you don't have to scour the internet, try to see what kind of information is available. And in addition to that, we also wanted you to have a platform where you can see where the gaps are. Because as we are coming from myriad of global issues, the pandemic and the economic crisis that's going on at the moment, we all have minimal resources, and we want to allocate them where there is a particular gap or where there is need. And we feel like with this report and with this resource, we should be able to know where the gaps exist in terms of information, in terms of data, what kind of needs currently exist in agro producers, so that we can be able to build upon it, and we can be able to provide a platform even for us to collaborate. Because if you have, or if you've seen through this particular report on this resource, that there is a study that has been done, or there is a resource that is available, you can easily share it with us and the team, and we can build upon this resource. So we'd like this to be that particular stepping stone to help the industry have that collaborative aspect where we can provide solutions to agro producers, leverage similar data, find ways of collaborating even further, and build upon what as Masico and Masico AgriFin and SPARC have been able to do. So this report is mainly meant to showcase level of access of digital services, the challenges that agro producers are facing. And we have been able to gather resources and conduct research for 3 countries. We have done for Kenya, we have done for Ethiopia, and we've done for Nigeria. We already did a webinar for Kenya, and the results have been published. And we're looking forward to publishing the Ethiopian results tomorrow. We'll be able to share with the participants of this particular webinar the link, and we'll also be sharing it on our social media channels and communication channels. And as Chloe said, we also will be working on addressing your questions even deeply, so that we can be able to address most of the issues and concerns that you might have. So as a team, we initially, as I said, we really thank you for joining this particular webinar. Thank you for your support. We have our funding partners who are part of this webinar as well. I won't take the opportunity to name all of you, but I hope that you appreciate our thankful and acknowledge your presence. We know that you are looking forward towards continue learning from us and seeing what we can be able to do as a team. So what we have planned for you is first, we are arranging a similar webinar for Nigeria. We will be reaching out to you on the details around that. And in November, there is an annual learning event that we conduct as AgriFin, that we are also partnering with SPARC. Initially, the AgriFin learning event was mainly focused on smallholder farmers, but we wanted it to be more complete and include all producers available. So we have now added that particular component and expanded the AgriFin learning event to be now 4 days. So we encourage you to come and be present in Nairobi from the 6th to the 8th of November to attend our learning event. And if you're not able to attend the event physically, there will be an online channel where you can be able to live stream the event and be part of the event with us. So as I wind up, I hope that you have been able to access the link and provided feedback for us in terms of the work going forward, how to improve our products or the webinar, and what resources you might need. We need to know as well which organizations you're from, so that we can see how best we can be able to improve going forward. So with that, I'll reiterate again, thank you for joining. Thank you for those who were able to wake up early and join us for this event. Hope it was useful for you as it was useful for us. At least now we have that particular resource that we can all refer to as we are looking at agro producers going forward. I'd like to end the webinar there and wish you all a great day or a great evening, wherever you are.